Beautiful afternoon to you. Welcome to the program Meet the Discourse right here on Global TV, Nigerian's capital city, Abuja. Meet the Discourse is a program where we take a look at happenings in the country and how to get them right and to move our academic forward. On today's edition of the program, we'll be looking at the activities of transparency, integrity, and of course, what it takes on private and government agency to ensure that the activities of this organization and the aim of the objective and why it was established is achieved. With me in the studio, I have my guest already. He's here with us in the studio. He's the public relation officer of this great institution, and he will be giving us a clear scorecard on the way forward and what is expected from them. Let's go straight and welcome Mr. Victor Agi. He is the public relation lead of the integrity, transparency, and a lot of activities under your portfolio. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, when we say transparency, integrity in Nigeria context, what exactly are we talking about?
Okay, yes, the name of my organization to start with is the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch. And so we actually out to see how governance can be improved. And we essentially believe that when we get the issue of transparency right, when we get the issue of accountability right, then we'll make a leap in the fight against corruption. You will agree with me that part of the problems, if not substantial part of the problems that we are having today in the country is as a result of the corruption that we neglect, is as a result of having people who do not have integrity in power, is as a result of having people who do not care much about transparency in power. And so when we talk about transparency, we simply say we are simply interested in how open the activities of those in governance is. And so the focus mostly for us is to actually check how open governance is, how transparent governance is. And so accountability is a border of transparency. And so when there is transparency, then we'll be making a big leap into accountability. And so those people we elect into governance at local, state, and federal level, they have a duty to be transparent because they are holding a position of trust, for the people. And so that is what the context of transparency as far as the organization, the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch is all about. We want to see how government spends its money. And so if so amount is voted for a project in a budget cycle, we want to see how those monies actually expended by those in power. And so that is actually the focal point of what we really do at the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch, to see that someone is actually monitoring the activities of government, the spendings of government, how government obtain loans, and the transparency in all of this process. We are essentially interested to ask, how did you obtain some of your loans? How did you even get your revenue? How are they expended? It is our inability as a people to ask some of these questions over time that has accumulated to the problems that we see today in the country. And so we are interested in the fact that when we elect people, they should be accountable to the people who elect them, because, like I said, they are holding position of trust and not just some jamboree, go there and do whatsoever you like and go. We can't continue like that. And so long as we are not interested in this, things will begin to go haywire like we are currently facing in the country. And so it is not just the responsibility of civil society like ours alone, and not even the responsibility of media like yours alone, but the responsibility of every Nigerian. You must be interested in how your monies have been spent, because you elect these people to represent you at whatsoever position of leadership. Yes.
Victor Agi is the public relation officer, but let's look at public sector's integrity. Public officers are mandated to comply with various codes from your office. How do you achieve this? What's the size of your office to monitor the entire country?
Well, we just have a building, you know. In terms of size, physical size, we may not be the biggest, you know, office, especially when you look at the volume of work that is required to actually monitor public sector transparency and integrity, as it were. But what we do is to actually see how we can leverage technology to do some of the things that we do. One of our flagship projects is the Transparency and Integrity Index. Of course, you know about the CPI, that is the Corruption Perception Index by the Transparency International. That seems to be the one that many people get to know about. For us, we want to see how we can develop an homegrown index to monitor how transparent public institutions are. And so in 2021, we developed that index to mark the United Nations Day for Universal Access to Information. And so we are interested in how accessible are government information. There are certain laws, of course, the freedom of information. That index is actually developed based on certain laws, local laws, and international commitment that the country has over the years committed to. You know about the freedom of information. For instance, Section 2 of the Freedom of Information actually highlighted the importance of proactive disclosure. And so as an MDA, you're actually mandated to proactively disclose certain information on your public portals. And so we are interested in how you have been able to fulfill that aspect of the law, for instance. If you check the Fiscal Responsibility Act, for instance, Section 47, 48 thereabout talked about MDAs actually publishing the audited report about 6 months after a budget cycle. But if you ask yourself how many MDAs actually do that today, the percentage is nowhere. And so,
and that is the question I was going to ask you. So what happened if they fail to do this?
Well,
are you policing them? Are you making some recommendation? Are you taking some steps against that?
Unfortunately, we don't have the power of enforcement, but what we do is to collaborate with agencies of government. When we developed that index in 2021, the highest ranked organization scored 33-point-something%, which according to our rating is very low, you know, in terms of transparency, proactive disclosure of information based on 5 variables, which include website integrity, open procurement, budget and financials, human resources and inclusion, and all of the other variables, sub-variable under it. The highest ranked organization, you know, scored 33. But when we decided that we can't continue like this because we don't have enforcement power, we don't have the ability to force a government agency to publish this information. So we decided to partner with a government institution, the Bureau of Public Service Reforms. It's actually a focal point for government reforms, you know, in the public service. And we saw that there was improvement in terms of rankings, in terms of performances of agencies in the following year. The highest rank at the time, I mean in 2022, scored about 58.7%, which was for us an improvement. In 2023, it jumped to 73%. And so we discovered that we cannot enforce. So what we do is to co-create, collaborate, and this is one thing that civil society and of course media must begin to, you know, start thinking about. How can we be less confrontational to actually co-creating ideas, collaborating to see how we can actually elicit some level of compliance from government agencies. And so the compliance level for us, for the index, has improved over the year. But again, there is more work to be done because we discovered that the organization at the top level category continue to improve, and most of them are some semi-government organizations, like Development Bank of Nigeria, for instance. It has a PPP arrangement, and so it's not strictly government. And so some of these organizations that are doing well in the index are organizations that do not have the core civil service, you know, operations in the way they actually carry out their activities. And so enforcement is important. But for us, what we think is this: if we put this information out there for agencies of government who enforce law to see, we expect them to feast on the information provided by these agencies. Because if you go to our portal, and of course the ranking data for this assessment, you will see that some information, some agencies of government have claimed so and so that they have done this. So we expect the EFCC, we expect the ICPC, and every other law enforcement agency to actually feast on them. We also expect the media to highlight some of the content, so-called, that some of these agencies claim, they have executed in their various agencies, So we don't have enforcement power, unfortunately, but we continue to advocate and harp on them for media to feast on them on one side, and of course for law enforcement agencies to also check, to see whether the information you provide for the citizens are actually correct. Then beyond all of that is the role of citizens. And so if we were able to actually get MDAs to publish some of this information, we expect the citizens, to check that this information you say, this project that you claim that you carry out in XYZ, we cannot see the project. So how did it come about? And I want to bring to this conversation the fact that where we have seen non-compliance most in our assessment is the area of procurement. And so most MDAs do not put their procurement information out there. And so it is difficult for some persons who are interested in checking the procurement record of MDAs to do that. Because
is there any penalty if that is not done? Well, if you don't publicize your bidding and so, is there any penalty for that?
Of course, when there is law, when the FO, that is the Freedom of Information Act, say that you must proactively disclose all your except of course for classified information, which are exemptions in law, and you don't you don't comply with those provisions of law, there are penalties. But again, what we are not, the lacuna in law, especially when it comes to some of these laws that we tie some of these provisions to, is the fact that they are not stringent penalties. Imagine that you violate a section of the law and you are made to pay a 5,000. That is not, it's nothing compared to actually the level of corruption. And that is the conversation some persons are having with, how is it that some persons steal billions of naira and they go into plea bargain and they are allowed to go scot-free? And so there are some sections of our law that we need to actually review. I talked about the FRA, that is the Fiscal Responsibility Act, earlier, and the law actually said that you must disclose, your digital budget, you must publish. But the law didn't go ahead to say failure to publish attracts so and so penalty. And so these are lacuna in law that some of the agencies actually faced on. But if we are interested in growing the country, if we are interested in transparency, then we must do the right thing.
Now, Mr. Victor, let's look at some of the activities that brings you to the limelight. Does the common Nigerian, does he know about some of this?
Yes, well, it's part of our vision for the year, but of course the common Nigerian know about what we are doing. I told you how we moved from 33 to 57 to 73 in the Transparency and Integrity Index, for instance. That is, for us, some improvement, growth in the work that we do. And so for my brother in the village, he may not know about the Transparency and Integrity Index, but what we have done is to improve governance by insisting on transparency. And so there is actually a ripple effect on the ordinary Nigerians. But that is just one of the projects that we do at the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Index. Last year, prior to the election, we actually launched a project on electoral financing. And so we are interested in how do politicians and parties actually source money for their campaign, financing. Recently, you saw that the candidate of the Labour Party, of course, the Labour Party actually released the audited account in quote, so-called audited account in quote, to say this was how much was received and how much was expended and how much was contributed by the candidate and by the, of course, the ordinary Nigerians who supported the party. And so the law, actually, the Electoral Act of 2022 specify all of these things. But over time, we saw that people do not actually follow the dictates of that law. Do you know that according to the Electoral Act, political parties are supposed to submit the audited report to INEC every year. I mean, after an election year, about 3 to 6 months after an election year, but most of them do not actually. And so for us, when we enforce some of these things, then we'll remove money in politics. We'll actually reduce the use of money because, of course, you can't totally eliminate the value of money in politics. But when we reduce the weaponization of money in politics by this politician, it will affect the ordinary people. But like I said, we are also actually trying to see how we can expand some of our vote cases to the local people to get them to own some of this process, and which is very, very important. Like the Transparency and Integrity Index I mentioned, last year we actually extended to local government, the assessment to local government. But the constraint for us was that only about 7 local governments in Nigeria, for instance, have public portals, websites, independent website, and so it was difficult for us to actually access them because we get our information from their public website, which the law actually mandated them to have in the first place. So you see the constraint, especially when it comes to us reaching out. But again, we can't stop talking about the fact that every MDA, every government institution, including local government, should have a public portal, where people can actually ask questions about governance, ask questions about things that relate to them, ask questions about the monies that were voted, to develop their society and all of that. So we are reaching out, and of course the impact has been there,
The impact has been there, as rightly said. My guest talk about Mr. Victor in the studio. We are looking at government businesses. Of course, they are all expected to display efficiency, honesty, integrity, transparency, as well as empowering all matters. Access to information, democracies are threatening when government provide access to information to the public. Ministries, departments, and agencies are obliged to publish certain information about the activities. This is where I am coming from. You did say the best you have gotten so far is within 37%, and from your presentation, it means there's still more work. Now, looking at these challenges, what else do you expect on your own part to improve your activities?
Yes, the best we have gotten, that is the 2023 index, the highest ranked organization, that is Development Bank of Nigeria, actually scores 73%, 73.8% thereabout. And so we saw that.
What's your yardstick? How did you score them 73%?
Well, the information that we require them, I told you the index is assessed.
Information provided by them or information you investigated?
We investigated, okay. So it's not provided by them. Okay. So what we do for the index is, in April, we actually launched the methodology. We present the methodology handbook to tell MDAs that these are the things that we'll be looking out for when the assessment begins. Of course, which will start in June thereabout, and of course will launch on the 28th of September, which is the United Day Universal Access to Information. And so we actually are collaborating with the Bureau, like I said, to see how we can get more people to be interested. We assess even state government as well. And over the years, we have seen some level of performance, but for last year, their performances dropped. And the reason their performances have been increasing in the first 2 years is because of a World Bank funded project, which also required them to actually disclose some of those information that we are also looking for. And because of that, they actually perform better. But we saw a kind of drop in their performances in the 2023 assessment. And so what we are doing is to see how we can collaborate. We are looking for ways to reach out to ALGON. We have already reached out to ALGON, that is the Association of Local Government of Nigeria, to see how they can mobilize local government. Because the first thing, especially as far as the assessment of local government is concerned, is for them to have a website, a public face. People want to go to a website and drop a message. Of course, inclusion is part of one of the variables that we look at for. And so people want to be able to go to your public website as a state government to see what was your budget for last year, what was the percentage, the percentage of execution, of the implementation of your budget last year. What are the things, how many people, for instance, human resources and inclusion as one of the variables that we consider. What is it called now? The Persons with Disability Act of 2019 thereabout actually mandate every MDAs to have about 5%, of their workforce with people with disabilities. But how many MDAs actually comply with some of these things, And so we are actually seeing how we can further our collaboration. We have visited the Nigerian government forums, which is actually a window to the state government, and to see how we can collaborate with them to get the governors to be interested in this index. We are just simply saying, post your information. Information on your public website. We are collaborating. We'll keep collaborating. We have been training. Some agencies of government have reached out to us to train them on how they can get better. And so there is some kind of commitment on the part of some of the agencies of government that want to improve in the rankings. And we hope that we'll continue to see what we can do to partner with these relevant agencies, that both the ones that are windows to the state, like I said, the NGF, Nigerian Government Governors Forums, and then, of course, the ALGON and every other agency, to see how they can buy into that project. Then other projects, because it seems we are focusing only on the Transparency and Integrity Index, which of course is our flagship project. In 2022, we developed what we call Probes Monitor. And what is Probes Monitor? From 1999 to date, government at every other day set up Probes panel to investigate acts of corruption, either by the National Assembly. So every other day, the National Assembly set up a panel to investigate the dollarization of the economy. And so they will set up every day at the National Assembly, you hear of probes set up to, of course, is within their constitutional right. But we are interested in what happens after a probe panel is set up. And so we developed the Probes Monitor to collate grand corruption-related probes from 1999 to date. It will interest you to know that we have about 595 probes.
So what are you doing with them?
Yes, what are we doing with them? We are doing advocacy about them. Recently, we are also trying to see how we can sieve the committees. There is members of the committees, the chairman of the committees, and then we are asking questions on what happened to these probes. How come, of course, you know that these people collect sitting allowance when they sit for these probes. And so how come you play to the media to say a probe has been set up and that is the end of the probe? We can't continue like that. So if probes are set up just for the facade, just to get people interested, excited, then we can't continue to set up the probe because monies are spent on your sitting allowance. And so we expect citizens to actually feast on that probe monitor portal to say, so if you check, I will allow you to go to that portal to see the grand corruption related probes, the billions of naira in dollars of probes that were set up by both the executive, the judiciary, and even the legislature, and we get to hear nothing about them besides just setting up. So we are interested in what is the outcome of these probes. And these are some of the things that we expect the citizens. We are pushing advocacy to get people to know that there is a portal like this. We expect the citizens to also go to those portals to ask questions. Because if your governor, because there are probes that involve governors as well, we are alleged to steal money, then you should be interested in what happened to this money as a citizen of a state, for instance. And so this is what we hope to achieve with the portal.
My guest is Mr. Victor Aggie. He's public relations lead of the Transparency International body, and they have a lot to do. Mr. Victor, you mean there is a state government without a website?
No. For the state government, all the state governments have a website. Yes.
And how much information do you think? Do they have quality information?
Well, our research actually is centered on 5 variables, like I said: fiscal transparency, website integrity, open procurement, financial and audits, human resources.
Do you find all this there?
Some of this, the information are actually on the website of the state governors. State government. And like I mentioned, that was largely because in the past, we are hoping that we'll see we are hoping that the trajectory will not change now that the funding by the World Bank is called State Fiscal Transparency something. It's a CEFTAS program, that was funded by World Bank. It actually encouraged proactive disclosure of information. So at the time we started the project, state governors were performing well. Kaduna at a point was on top. Then Ekiti was also doing well, and a couple of other states were also doing well, with their performance in terms of the disclosure of some of this information. But like I said, now that the funding has ended, there was an incentive for them to actually disclose some of this information before now. But now that the funding has ended, we want to see how they will perform going forward. Last year, we
you
saw
have
that
a deadline. You have a deadline for them to make this
yes,
publication available.
Yes, the cycle of the assessment is by April, we'll actually publish the methodology for the year,
okay,
the guiding actually principle for the assessment for stakeholders' input. And so when we present the methodology, we expect people to say, we don't understand this part of your methodology. These are the things that I think for our organization. So we collate all of the inputs at the presentation of the methodology, and then by June, the assessment will start. And so we don't tell you that we are now at your portal for you to go and up. No, it's an independent assessment,
okay,
but we tell you the timeline. This from June to August, the end of August, we are doing this assessment. We are checking your public portals to see if all of the information that we require in the index are actually there. So we don't really tell them per se to say we are visiting your website today, so that. But of course, we tell them this is the cycle for the assessment, the presentation of the methodology, and then the assessment proper, and then the presentation, which happens usually on the 28th of September to mark the United Nations Day for Universal Access to Information.
Midday Discourse on Global TV, coming away live on the red from Nigerian's capital city. This beautiful afternoon, we are looking at Nigerian compliance with the integrity international activities in the country. My guest is Mr. Victor Agi, who is the public relations lead. We'll take a break, and when we come back, there will be more on the program Midday Discourse. And how can Nigerians truly benefit from this? What is their strength of getting to know all this information just at your fingertip? Let's take a break. When we come back, my guests will still be with us. Don't go away. If you're just joining us, the program is Midday Discourse right here on Global TV, coming away live and direct from Nigeria's capital city. Today we are looking at the mandate to comply with various codes of ethics in government businesses. They are expected to display efficiency, honesty, integrity, transparency, as well as making their activities known to the general public. Access to information democracy are strengthened with government providing access to information to public, Ministries, departments, and agencies are obliged to publish certain information about their activities and the function. And this is where we come again. When you said they are obliged, looking at Nigeria, would you say, at what percentage could you say is the level of compliance of this information? From the state to the local government to even private sectors?
Yeah, the level of compliance, like I mentioned earlier, is actually there at the top level category agencies. And by top level, I meant organizations who have been performing well consistently in the last 3 years have actually continued to perform well. I mentioned Development Bank of Nigeria. There is also the Bureau of Public Service Reforms also is doing well. PENCOM is doing well. And some other agencies of government like that, most of them are not core ministries, that are actually the civil service agencies, in quote, like we refer to them. And so the compliance, the level of compliance is there. More people are getting to know about the index. Of course, we try to see how we can get MDAs to really know about the index. And that is why I mentioned that we call them to be part of the methodology launch, even the launch of the assessment itself. We also invite them. Like I mentioned, we are partnering with Bureau of Public Service Reforms. Fortunately for us, our partnership with them has also helped us to reach a lot of agencies with the Transparency and Integrity Index, for them to know that there's actually a civil society organization watching, their compliance with laws on access to information. Access to information is very, very important. It is very, very important for transparency and accountability. And where there is transparency and accountability, like I mentioned ab initio, then corruption will reduce. And so the whole essence of this is to see how corruption in the public sector can reduce. Today, we are also seeing how we can see to the passage of the Whistleblower Protection Act, for instance. And that is another way to get people to be more involved in the fight against corruption, so that when people have information, they can volunteer those information to relevant authority who will pick them up and act on them to fight corruption. And so this is also another way of actually getting government agencies to be more transparent. We want you to publish your information. There are laws, tons of laws which mandate them to actually do this. There are executive orders, which mandate MDAs to actually publish their information. There's Executive Order 007 of 2007. And a lot of other executive orders and, of course, laws. I mentioned the Freedom of Information Act. I mentioned the Fiscal Responsibility Act. There is, of course, the Peoples with Disability Act, for inclusion purpose, and several. There's the Procurement Act, even though we are pushing for e-procurement, which we actually eliminate the human factor in our procurement processes. And so if every MDA, for instance, actually carry out its procurement processes online. You advertise online, you get your bidding online, you award online. All of the processes in procurement, involving procurement, when MDAs push that to to the digital, to online, it will help improve transparency. And that is what this project is all about. That there can only be transparency when there is access to information. When there is access to information, citizens are more involved. They can ask more questions. They can, interrogate your spendings and all of that. And that is what the project is about. And we hope to make some more impact, like I said.
Mr. Victor, you talked about the availability of site, the availability of internet, and you draw your conclusion saying local government. Some of these local government do not even have access to internet. How can they be seen to be active on your demands?
It is an indictment on the government that a local government headquarter, do not have a website, do not have an internet. So it speaks to the level of underdevelopment, the level of rot in our system. that a local government, which is the third tier of government in Nigeria, do not have a website, a public website. It's an indictment. It speaks to the fact that there is an hijack of the system, the local government system in Nigeria, and is what we must continue to interrogate. Recently, I read something from the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy about what some work they want to do along that line, trying to get more local government to be visible. And so we hope that they will actually pull through to see that every local government, that is the beginning of transparency. That is the beginning of the fight against corruption we are talking about. And indeed is the beginning of independence of the local government. That whatsoever you are doing is on your public website. And then more Nigerians, because again, we are seeing that more Nigerians are getting interested in governance. And so the only way they can get to know about your activity as a local government is through your website, is through your social media page. And so we expect that local government should have a website. They should have a social media where their citizens, the informed citizens, can actually go and make inquiries and get information about the monies they receive every year. They receive money, as a matter of fact, every month, from the FAC, the federal allocation that they got from the FAC, even though there are also issues around the state government actually cornering those monies and then detect how the monies are spent. And it's an indictment that local government are not strong enough to have a website. Only 7 from our assessment of 2023, only 7 of them.
Out of 704.
774. So it's ridiculous. We can't continue like that. If we are really, really interested in good governance, if you're interested in transparency and accountability, people should be heard. So
are you saying that in the absence of site and internet, you can't carry out your activities? It's quite challenging?
Well, for us, our tool for getting information, the methodology that we have designed is to use your public website. And that is why website integrity is one of the variables. We want to even see how many dead links, because again, that is another thing, that an agency of government will post its budget, that when you click on it, it will take you to a dead link. The link is not, there's nothing on the link. And so we want to check all of those things. And so website is our tool for gathering our information for our assessment. And so if you don't have a website, you are automatically disqualified for the assessment. And so it's an advocacy also.
Do you help them sometime to have this website? Because like local government.
Well, we are hoping that we'll be able to get some funding to be able to do that. For now, we don't have that support, but again, we can also we are also looking at having discussion with some relevant agency. Galaxy Backbone is supposed to lead that digital transformation. Of course, there is need there, or even though its focus is more on the national, but I mean, there are agencies of government who should lead the digital transformation. The Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, like I said, is making some move in that direction. So we hope that they sustain. But of course, if at any point that we need to support as an agency, but like I said, we're a civil society. We work based on what is available to us in terms of funding. But we'll continue to see what we can do. What we can also do is what we are doing with Algon. When we partner with you, you know that this is a tool, for this assessment. So it will push you to start advocating for local government to have a website as a start. Because again, we are not antagonistic, but at the same time, we are also using this to shame people, shame some local governments. How is it that you don't have a website?
Well, individuals could mount 3 or 4 websites, and then an institution like a local government.
Yes.
Countering organized crime in the society becomes more relevant to crime when government actively deploy comprehensive and effective strategies for countering organized crime. Crimes such as drug trafficking. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, countering organized crime is one of our new projects that we are designing, because we discovered that there is a relationship between corruption, insecurity, and organized crime. So if you don't fight corruption, then you feed organized crime, you feed insecurity. And that is what we are currently having. It is the corruption that we do not fight that has led many to go into armed trafficking, that led many to go into banditry, and all of those things. And all of this feed into the organized crime we are talking about. So our organized crime project, which began last year with a symposium, an international symposium on organized crime, is actually designed to see how we can help government with data. We have a CASPA database, a database where we map crime. It's a crime mapping database which should guide government agencies on where crimes are actually concentrated, and of course the crime distribution across the nation. And so that is one of the things we are doing with that database. But beyond and beside all of this is the fact that people need to know about what these organized crime are. There are some persons who are being used for organized crime purpose without even knowing, and so there's drug crime which is prevalent in the society, for instance. Like I said, there is an interrelationship between financial crime, for instance, and terrorism, which is an organized crime today. There's a relationship between financial crime and drug trafficking, even environmental crime today. Yeah. And so there is a relationship which all boils down to weak institution, corruption, transparency, and integrity that we are fighting. And so we felt that we need to actually go into that sector to see how we can assist government with data on how they can fight some of this crime. We are also looking at advocacy, which is our strong tool to actually continue to harp on these issues for people to be aware that there are organized criminal gangs just beside you. So if you're not careful, you'll be susceptible, to their use and all of that. So advocacy is our major tool. We are also big on data in terms of the crime mapping, like I mentioned, a software that actually sieve crime, map crime across the country, and all of that. So it's a project we are looking to see also, because the end result is for us to have a policy on, because currently, while we have anti-corruption strategy policy, we don't have a policy on organized crime. So we are looking to work with relevant agencies, especially the National Security Office, Advisor Office, to see how a policy on organized crime can be developed. Of course, in terms of the civil society work that we do, we know that the UNODC, the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, is also big on issues of organized crime. And so we are looking to work with all of the relevant agencies to see how a policy on organized crime can be developed. And like I said, the major tool for us is advocacy. People should know that there's drug trafficking. People should know that there's human trafficking. People should know that there is terrorism. Of course, you don't even need to be told to know that there is terrorism. Of course, the predicate offenses that come with it, the banditry, the kidnapping, and all of those other crimes are also something that should be concerning. But again, like I said, the most and the important thing that we need to tackle is corruption. When we tackle corruption, it will reduce the spate of some of these crimes.
My guest has been Mr. Victor Agi, and he has truly given to us the best that all we need to know as far as compliance is concerned in the transparency in the country. For economic growth and development, it is critical for Nigeria to entrench physical transparency and accountability. This entails the reporting of comprehensive, unambiguous, and timely information. Mr. Victor, your last word. Are there challenges in obtaining some of this information? Are there major challenges your body is fighting?
Yes, there are challenges. Of course, there are challenges. People don't want to be transparent. And that is where the corruption is. It may not necessarily be the desk officer who is supposed to upload, some of this information on their public website. It may actually be the man on the top who actually give directives on what should go out and what should not go out. And the public service, the public sector is big on bureaucracy, is big on procedures, which is very okay. But when those procedures and bureaucracy are actually invented to stifle information, then it becomes a problem. And that is where the challenge is. We want to see how we can get people, I mean, public institutions to voluntarily disclose this information. And so if you budgeted a 2 trillion for a year, and you finish spending the money after the budget cycle, just tell us how you spend the money. And that is where they are running away from, because people will ask questions. How come you spend out of the 2 trillion, you spend 1 trillion on food stuff, and some other ridiculous things that we see in our budget, really. And so there are challenges. The challenge of not wanting to be accountable for public resources. It's actually a big challenge. But like I said, we are partnering with relevant agencies to see how how government agencies can see what we are doing as complementary. And so if as a government agency, you disclose your information, then you won't be running away from the guys, the EFCC guys, the ICPC guys, and all of that. So we are complementing their work. Really.
What a way to say. Thank you very much for being part of today's edition of the program Midday Discourse. It has been the moment for us to have a clear idea, and of course making sure that public officers are accountable. Of course, public officers are mandated to comply with various codes of ethics in government businesses. They are also expected to display efficiency, honesty, and integrity. Mr. Victor, I want to say a very big thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I do hope that when next we call you, you will be able to give us all that will make Nigeria a better country.
Certainly. Thank you very much for having me.
That's the size of today's edition of the program, Midday Discourse on Global TV. On today's edition of the program, we took a look at the transparency and, of course, the level of compliance in the country, which is nothing to write home about. But we do hope that Nigerians will find a way to make all this information available for the public to enhance efficiency in their operations. That's the size of the program Midday Discourse. My name is Agbo Clinton Ayuk. Midday Discourse is a regular program on Global TV Monday to Friday. I want to say a big thank you for joining us. If you did enjoy the program, do same. Next time, same station, the program Midday Discourse. And I am Clinton Agbo saying, have a wonderful day ahead of you.